decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsberg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show with Dave Manouk and the absent Ezra Ginsberg. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next 2 hours to talk about everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets. Ken Wiebe is going to join us at the bottom of the hour. Anthony Sanfilippo at the bottom of hour number 2. Dave, I say good morning to you. How are you doing on this Saturday morning? Good to see you, my fine sir.
I am doing well. How are you, Drew?
Well, with all this talk yesterday about pace, I thought I decided that I would today start try and improve my pace to the intro of the show to really get people into it, to make sure that I'm playing at the pace that I need to play at to be at my best to do this show, just like the Winnipeg Jets need to be playing with pace to be at their best to perform and get their wins when they face the Philadelphia Flyers later tonight.
I thought, as Kenny's water bottle points out, that you were just trying to make up for all the time that we were delayed. And instead, you were just trying to, hey, look, I like the theme. I like that you're trying to keep the continuity from yesterday's Jets practice, the commentary that was coming out of there yesterday. So I think that's a good way to start the show because, yes, pace was a buzzword in the media availabilities yesterday. No media availabilities today, which is a little unusual. No morning skate for the Jets, which again is a little unusual given the fact that four guys, including Connor Hellebuck, Nikolai Ehlers, Dylan DeMello, and Pierre-Luc Dubois, didn't skate yesterday at practice, but Rick Bowness did say the four were maintenance. I think he said Connor Hellebuck would get on the ice today, and that the four were just simply maintenance, dealing with some, well, not necessarily Connor Hellebuck, but the other three were dealing with some bumps and bruises. Yeah. So, and the reality is nobody's 100% during this point of the season, so everybody's dealing with some sort of malaise. Yes. And anyway, so yeah, I mean, it's just an interesting. I know, like, it's funny because I said first time, and then Murat tweeted back at me saying, "Well, no, they do this on back." I'm like, "Well, no, I know that they do it on back to backs," and he said something to do it on the road. But I mean, like, I said to him, like, I've never. I mean, as someone who documents this and looks at every, puts the pregame media availability on our pregame report, I don't ever recall doing this for a home game. Let's put it that way. Maybe it's certainly again, with the exception of obviously a back-to-back, it's a different story. But for just a random home game, I don't ever remember.
Well, a random home game that starts at a normal time with 6 o'clock. Right. Yeah, because everybody was prepared. I was even going to suggest to you guys earlier in the week, but I forgot that maybe we should broadcast from the arena for this morning's game, given that it's a Saturday night, it's at home. There's going to be a morning skate happening. Good thing we didn't go through all those the dog and pony show.
It's still a good backdrop.
It would have been a good backdrop.
Like we like our respective backdrops, including the picture of the three of us.
That's right, exactly. But in any event, it is a bit of an unusual move, but I can understand it. They talked about all the bumps and the bruises and everything about that the Jets are trying to. Oh, look who's decided to stroll on in and join us.
Good morning, boys. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, exactly. Who gave him the code to get into the show, Dave?
Well, Ezra, my first question to you is.
How's the
By the way, just so you know, Spencer Sutton suggested that you run a disk defrag, and some of the other chatters were saying don't upgrade to Windows 11, which is weird because you're using a Mac computer.
Yeah, this computer is definitely on the way out. I have no idea what disk defrag means, but I'll definitely try it. I mean, there's something going on. So sorry about that, boys. I was listening to the show. It's been a good show so far. So I'm glad that my computer is cooperating and we can get going here.
There you go. Exactly. We were talking about, Ezzy, the buzzword after yesterday's practice, and that being pace.
What about stubbornness?
Well, I mean, that too, I guess. I'm
pretty sure Bones used like stubborn at least, I don't know, 5 times after the game on Thursday night.
Well, I mean, they were being stubborn after the game on Thursday night, trying to, do things and go with, what was the quote I saw? We're trying to make plays that work one every, 100 times. And, it's not a recipe for success, of course. And so that was the talk. There was a lot of, Josh Morrissey was sort of pouring cold water on the idea that, things are there needs to be a degree of panic. I think he thought that there was a tone of panic and maybe some of the questions that they were facing yesterday from the media after Thursday's game against the Buffalo Sabres, and he poured cold water on that as something that they don't need to worry about. But the issue of pace, that's a good one. And I'm glad that that was brought up, and I'm glad that that was sort of discussed, because they really haven't played with that necessary pace. And they haven't played their game since that, with the exception of that game probably in Pittsburgh. I would say even the Ottawa game, that was a pretty one-sided victory by the Jets. But more often than not over the last couple weeks, where they've been in this little bit of a, let's call it a slog, because calling it a struggle is probably overstating things. I mean, they're still, in the last 7 games, it's not like this is a team that needs to be panicked. They're 3-4 in their last 7. Yeah, that's not going to get it done over the course of a year, but if that is what your struggle looks like, whereas majority of the time you're playing at a higher winning percentage or a higher points percentage, then you're probably okay. So let's call it a slog that they're in. How do they get out of this slog? They talked about it yesterday. They said all the right things. They said they need to be playing.
Were they the right things? Like, to me, like, there's a lot of hyperbole. Like, right now they're not playing well. Like, so you can call it pace, you can call it stubbornness, everything like that, right, boys? And yeah, sure. Like, it is a slump, Drew. Like, they've lost 4 of their last 6 games. And if you throw in the Arizona game, that could be 5 of their last 6, right? So, I mean, like, we're not confusing slump with, the Jets falling out of a playoff spot, right? Because I think anytime you hear slump, Jets fans get a little bit nervous based on what happened last year, right? So they're comfortably in second in the Central, guys. Everybody knows that. Even though you have Colorado nipping at your heels, they're still comfortably in second, comfortably in a playoff spot. But it starts with scoring goals. Like, we've talked about this. How many games as of late have the Jets only scored a goal, right? A lot lately. 4 of their last 6, right? So, and they only scored a couple against Arizona. So it starts with, they need some more contributions from 3rd and 4th line guys, Dave, but they also need guys like Mark Scheifele and, Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Blake Wheeler to step up. Like, yes, Adam Lowry is currently in a long goal scoring slump, but he's not your primary goal scorer. So, that it starts with that. I mean, and it also, could help if you played a little bit better, defensively and turned the puck over. So there's a lot here. And again, I'm not, concerned about the Jets missing the playoffs. That's not at all what I'm talking about, but they haven't exactly had the hardest schedule, right? Like, you're talking about losses to Montreal, you're talking about losses, to the Buffalo Sabres. Like, even though the Sabres are a team that, we expect to continue to be competitive for a playoff spot, I think they're 3 points back, if I'm not mistaken. And they're battling with the Florida Panthers to catch Pittsburgh and Washington, right? So, I mean, there's no doubt right now that the Jets are not playing very well, and they're healthy, right? Like, with the exception of Mason Appleton, guys, and I guess, Gus Bus could be thrown in there, but we know that Appleton's going to come back eventually, and Gus Bus, as Dave has documented on illegalcurve.com, that's not serious. So they're, 95% healthy or something like that, call it that, right? So you can't blame that. You can't blame travel. The next 2 games are, as far as I'm concerned, must wins. Like, you have to win these games. And I think they will. Like, I think they're going to have a much better effort, and poor Flyers, because all the Jets goal scoring struggles, I think, there's going to be an explosion tonight. I think the Jets players, coaching staff, nobody was happy with that last game against the Sabres. And I do expect the Jets to pop in 4 or 5 tonight.
Well, you talk about that. So they said all the right things, or they said things, whether or not you think they're the right
things.
That's
exactly what that's right. They said things.
they said
things that sounded like, what we wanted to hear.
That's right. They acknowledged that their performance as of late hasn't been up to snuff. So, Dave, do you expect to see that better response that, as he just said, he expects to see them be able to score on a Philadelphia Flyers team that is, they're just not a really good hockey team. We've seen that the holes that the Flyers have, in their roster. We saw it, it was evident, last week. It's a Flyers team that, gives up a lot, doesn't score a ton. They're just a middling hockey team. Did you hear what you needed to hear yesterday that leads you to believe that the Jets are going to be able to, spend the next 2 games rectifying what has been ailing them over the past 6 or 7?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got Philadelphia, and as we've documented, they're 7th right now in their division. So they're not a very good hockey team. They've come in, I believe, losing their last 2 games in overtime, but we saw them 3 games ago. They're not a very good hockey team. This is a team that the Jets, can and should be able to handle. And yeah, you should be able to look. You've been very good at home. You're 17-7 in Canada Life Center. So I mean, that works in your favor. And maybe it's freezing cold out, so maybe that helps freeze out the Flyers a little bit because of the polar vortex we're suddenly dealing with. We went from a balmy -6 to to -40. So anyways, the point of the story is that it's just been a difficult slog, but you do have an opportunity to kind of build something right now against, a Flyers team that isn't kind of finding itself right now. They're finding themselves to be where they are, which is not a very good hockey team, and allows the Jets to kind of get back, to their groove. And then you have a final game against St. Louis, which kind of, St. Louis, they've been dealing with a lot, obviously, and getting pumped by Arizona the other day. What was it, 5-0? That doesn't do a lot for the confidence when you're losing to the Arizona Coyotes 5-0. So the Blues are in a bit of trouble as well, and that gives you an opportunity to kind of, leave it all out there. And there's some question marks, right? We don't know about whether Dylan Samberg is coming back in the lineup. Mason Appleton, again, someone was asking in the chat what his status is, and Rick Bowness said he
Dylan Samberg did stay late on the ice though, Dave. So I would think Logan Stanley's playing tonight. Yeah,
but I'm saying that but what I'm suggesting is that for like a guy like Mason Appleton, Rick Bowness said he was he wouldn't rule him out for today or Monday. But I mean, again, Tuesday. I don't know why you would Monday.
It's game Monday.
It's Monday.
It's Monday or Tuesday, guys.
I'm pretty sure it's Tuesday. I thought it was Tuesday. I have to change my whole schedule if it's.
I'm like 90%.
It's either the day after Monday or it's the day before Tuesday.
It is Monday.
What are you calling into question the guy who does this?
I had no idea.
We'll bring Kenny Weeb on to talk. Kenny can wake up, Drew.
Can you
Monday, buddy?
Monday versus Tuesday debate? It's a raging debate right now.
Yeah. I'm on a plane on Tuesday morning, so I'm planning to attend and cover the game on Monday night.
There we go.
Well, I'm glad you are, because apparently I was going to be a little bit delayed. It was showing up 24 hours late on Tuesday and wondering where everybody is. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning. Nice to be with everyone. How's the start to the day going here?
Well, we've had some computer troubles, we've got some date troubles, but now that you're here, everything is trending upwards, let's say. So we're thrilled that you're able to join us. I mean, I know that I texted you. I can't speak for the other buffoons here, but this is our first time getting together since you made your debut on HNIC. What I didn't know what you did, Dave.
I didn't text. I didn't have to text Ken because I was in the press box, and I personally congratulated him on that achievement.
And Kenny knew that I was just watching back here in the peg, so Kenny didn't need me to text. He knew that I was, with him, supporting him, right?
You guys are beautiful humans. Thank you very much. That was quite a day, that's for sure.
I'm not sensing the same level of emotion that for joining us as you had when you joined them. And I don't know if that's just is that maybe an oversight or the good drugs are kicking in today, but whatever it is, I just don't get the same sense of pride and esteem bubbling up from you.
Hey, I love being on. I love talking hockey on all platforms, including this one. You know that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
We know that. I guess you thought you'd be down. You thought you'd be downtown right now, and then they sort of threw a curveball at all of us, where there's no morning skate. So that sort of came out of. That was a bit of a surprise, after yesterday, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I would put it this way. We know that the excuse meter has been low. The solutions meter has been high. So to me, this is two coaches, not just the Jets. The Flyers are not skating either, even though they were in Minnesota the day before. And practiced there before they flew over. So I would just put it this way. I mean, teams are all getting around that 50 to 52 game range. There's been quite a bit of hectic travel in the month of January as people get ready for their 5-day break plus the All-Star break. It just seems like you're trying to get your work done in the shorter practices rather than get your body up twice. I mean, again, we know that the morning skate isn't overly taxing, but the process of getting geared up, getting geared down, ready. The Jets will have a meeting this afternoon, and we'll try to exert all their energy into tonight's game. Same for the Flyers. I think everyone's just kind of in that situation where you're grinding towards the break, and you want to try to have the tank as full as possible as you look to empty it. I think in the next couple of games here, that would be kind of my interpretation of it. In terms of the questioning, Dave, I'm with you. I mean, earlier in the week, Rick said it was most likely Mason would be after the break, and just since the fact he was unable to get out of the non-contact yesterday, I do think he is ruled out of the last two here, and I think they're just going to more of a cautionary. If it were the playoff game, if the playoffs were starting on Tuesday, I think maybe you'd see Appleton get in a game or two here, but just based on the fact that he's been out for so long. I think they're just going to give him the opportunity to just get a couple more days, or 10-day break or whatever it ends up being, 8 to 10-day break, so he can be fully healthy as they get ready for after the All-Star game and the bye week. And that also would give them a little bit more time to make one of those important roster decisions that will be looming. And in terms of Sandberg, I also do think that he's going to be out for at least one more game here. Just sounded like Logan Thompson doing a great job in Vegas. Didn't play last night. Heading to speaking of All-Stars, Brandon Wheat Kings alum, heading to Florida as well. But Logan Stanley with 2 games under his belt, I think he'll get a third. I just spoke with him briefly yesterday. He was off the ice a little bit earlier. Sounded like he was feeling better. Felt better in game 2 than in game 1, and it seemed like all signs pointed for him to be in the lineup. So unless there's some, a banged up body, well, we know that Dylan DeMello didn't skate yesterday, but he is expected to go along with Nikolai Ehlers, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Connor Hellebuyck, all of whom missed the Friday activities. So I think that's where we're at in terms of the lineup, unless there's another curveball thrown in the 4 or 3:30 p.m. availability. Those would be the people that we expect to see on the ice against the Flyers this evening.
Yeah, people will be really shocked when you go out there for morning skate, for the pregame skate. That'll be a real curveball. Kenny, based on the comments yesterday, obviously everyone acknowledged, all the players acknowledged that the play hasn't been the level that they want it to be at over the last, let's say, 6, 7, 8 games, whatever number you want to use.
Sure.
Did you hear what you sort of expected to hear? Did you hear anything that maybe was surprising to you as you went around the room and as you spoke to Rick Bowness yesterday in the course of the media availabilities?
It's interesting. I mean, I think that this group's been very honest with itself, throughout the course of the season. So I thought it was, there was a bit of defiance, I think, and I actually kind of liked it, to be quite frank, from Josh Morrissey. Mm-hmm. He didn't really appreciate the sky is falling, that was his interpretation of the questioning, and I like it. I mean, I think that's leadership, guys. I mean, if Josh is out there saying, oh, you know what, for the last 10 games we've been garbage and I don't know when we're going to be good again, then all of us are going, oh my God, whoa, what's he talking about? So I actually quite liked it. I mean, and when I say defiant, I mean, Josh is such a very kind and humble person. He wasn't attacking anybody verbally by any stretch, but I got the sense that in terms of the what was said versus what was unsaid, I think Josh made it quite clear that they need to get back to their identity, but I think he also made it very abundantly clear that the sample size over the 50-game total should tell you, I, and anyone else who's wondering if the Jets are about to fall off the cliff. That was his own personal version of the wake up. I think it was, we've shown you for almost over half of the season that this is the kind of team that we are. So if there's a stumble during a 8 to 10 game block, eight of those games which have been played on the road, and an East-West combo platter, I think that he made it quite clear that, they aren't thrilled about the last little while, but he was quite happy with their ability to still manage to be in games when they weren't at their absolute best. So to me, I thought that was a good show of leadership. And I thought that, and he also, but at the same time, also being quite frank and knowing that, have they been playing fast enough? No. I mean, Blake Wheeler said it also. Mm-hmm. We haven't been playing with pace. And when you're not playing with pace, then those errors are, enhanced or heightened because A, you didn't make the play quick enough, and B, you don't have the legs to get back on the back pressure to chase the puck and get it right back. So, and in terms of Rick Bowness, I mean, he was quite frank in saying that, can they be better? Have they been better? Will they be better? Yes, 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 and yes. So I liked it. I mean, I think this is, it's also interesting. I mean, I wrote in my column for sportsit.ca yesterday, guys, that, I mean, when a team establishes such a high standard and when you don't play to that standard, it becomes quite obvious, right? I mean, in terms of the identity pieces, the confidence, the Josh Morrissey's words, the swagger, right? So they haven't been playing with that swagger since the game in Pittsburgh, which was their best game of the year. And yes, that was in this 10-game block. So it hasn't all been bad by any stretch. There just have been some loose periods. And I think the thing that people have been the most confused about, guys, and I know you are among this group, the Jets have been getting healthier, so we just expected them to like skyrocket their play, right? Yes, there was going to be a 4 or 5 game block where these guys were integrated back into the lineup. But after that, well, hey, you've been scoring with waiver wire claims and AHL call-ups in the lineup. Now you're going to start scoring like one of the top 5 teams in the NHL. And that is the issue. I wouldn't say that it's troubling to me, but that's the part about this block that has caught my attention. I mean, 5 out of 7, 2 goals or fewer is not what we expected based on the impact guys like Nikolai Ehlers are having. And Ehlers has been flying around since he's been back, but it hasn't translated into the overall offensive juggernaut that we were expecting. Because, I mean, for 40 plus games, the Jets were more of a defensive juggernaut. And yes, of course, we know they still are reliant on Connor Hellebuck and the high danger chances are too high. They're just not as high as they were previously. So I think it's super interesting to see how things go in these last 2 before the break and then after the break, because let's face it, we know it, they know it, everybody knows it. Goals are harder to come by in the second half, in the final 30, and then the final 20, and then the final 10, then the final 5. And then, oh, by the way, when the playoffs start, it's even harder to score. So I think that there's still plenty of runway for the Jets to get their offensive game in order, but it has to not come at the expense of all of the work you've worked and your commitment to defensive zone structure, which has also been a little bit leaky lately. So you have a bunch of things kind of coming together at the same time. And can you get all of those, check marks in all of those boxes without cheating the game in one of the areas in order to get to that point? So that's the challenge for Rick Bowness and the players. And I think they're welcoming that challenge with open arms. But I mean, it is going to be something that we're definitely going to be monitoring closely here in the last 32 games.
Yeah, and Kenny, you mentioned 5 of the last 7 games the Jets have scored 2 goals or less, and that's what I wanted to ask you. I caught you on Winnipeg Sports Talk yesterday with Huss and Remo, and Huss was asking you about the forward lines, and you had mentioned that you believe Scheifele, Wheeler, Ehlers stays together, Connor, Dubois, Perfetti stays together, and to me that's kind of at the core of some of these offensive struggles, because yes, you want to get offense from guys like Adam Lowry, who he will score eventually, but he's in a bad scoring slump. He's having a great year, but the puck just isn't going in for him right now. You would agree. I don't think anybody's worried, and nobody's expecting a 30-goal season out of big number 17, right? But do you expect, again, I just mentioned what you said yesterday, anybody who listened, but is there a chance, especially if the first period is a little bit slow, do you see Rick Bowness going back and putting Ehlers back with Connor and Dubois? Because that was the most successful that trio has ever been, was earlier this season. I feel like I don't know if that's necessarily the be all end all, and that's the reason why the Jets will end up winning these last 2 games. But it just seems like there's something a little bit off in that top 6.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're searching for the perfect chemistry, and I think the big thing for me is that I don't think they know what the optimal 6 guys are. I mean, they know what the optimal 6 players are. They don't know what the right permutations and combinations are going to be yet, because as you mentioned, I mean, yes, that line was flying for a while, but it kind of came at the expense of the second line. So you're not just looking for one line to be carrying the load here. You're looking for a diversification so that it's, Rick Bowness talked about this earlier this week. I mean, how are the opposition coaches trying to attack things when you have kind of dynamic pairs in Connor and Dubois, and you have Ehlers and Scheifele? So now you have to, who are you putting your prime checking line on, and who are you rolling the dice to go head to head with? Because generally speaking, I mean, the offensive guys aren't as adept defensively. So you need to have, to be able to stretch out your offensive production. And you're right. I mean, let's face it. Adam Lowry had a fantastic start to the year offensively, was trending for 15 plus, and now is in a 23 game drought here. So the chances have been there. Adam will get it sorted out. He's going to be a 10 to 15 goal guy, no question in my mind. And the Jets will continue to lean on his line when it comes to the head-to-head matchups that they are taking when they can get them. For me, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be important for Ehlers and Scheifele to get some runway together. We already know that Ehlers can jump on and play on that other line if necessary. I like the fact that Perfetti is there. I know he hasn't played a ton of right wing. Dave, you know that obviously from watching him with the Moose, was mostly center left wing when he was there. But I like him there because he's smart enough to be there, and he doesn't have to be there all the time. But I like him there because of his, puck handling ability. And, what we've seen from Cole at times is that he has seen himself primarily as a passer rather than a shooter. And when it's especially evident when he's with Scheifele and Wheeler, at least it has been to me, where he's been a little bit more deferring to the others. And Dave, obviously, you know this too, and I've been saying it for years. We saw that goal against Freddie Anderson when he was down on the conditioning stint with the Marlies. Like, this is a guy that can go bar down. He's got a great release. He has a great shot, and it's only natural that he's going to become more and more comfortable using that shot as he moves along. In terms of Scheifele, the reason why I think Ehlers is a good fit there is because of the speed. I think the issue that the Jets were having when Ehlers is up on that top line with Dubois and Connor, yes, Blake Wheeler at times can still play with plenty of speed, but there have been nights where his legs maybe weren't at the grade A level, and that's natural given his age and the mileage on the odometer, but he's still having a good year. But to me, when you have Ehlers there, you just have that more dynamic speed, and it forces Scheifele to play with more pace also, which is very important for the Jets. But the one thing too, they do click together, and we've seen them click at times, but Nikolai Ehlers, because he is more of an east-west player, Mark has always preferred more of a north-south game. So there is some adaptation that is happening with Mark Scheifele when he plays with Ehlers. So some nights when they're thinking in lockstep, it looks absolutely brilliant. And then there are other nights where Mark is expecting him to zig and Nikolai decides to zag. So, that's when you get into what we're seeing right now, when it's not just free-flowing and it's happening, it's resulting in a 5-goal night every night, and these guys are making the defense look silly because their brains are like working as one essentially. So,
I feel like that's happening right now with IC and Kenny Wee. By the way, we're all of our brains are just combined right now, and it's just a superhuman brain.
Well, that's good.
Except it's the episode of The Simpsons where Hans Moleman has kids and they all just run into each other and fall out the window. That's the only difference.
So yeah, I think it's super interesting because here's the other part of it, guys. I know we're going to be going here eventually, but so you're going to be spending this block of time trying to get the optimal lineup, and then in all likelihood they'll be bringing in a top 6 forward and maybe even a middle 6 or 4th line forward. So you're getting it's like the chemistry assignments. You got a lot of beakers being pouring what's the right formula. And then all of a sudden, someone's going to come in with a hammer and smash a couple of the beakers and say, "You can start again now." And I'm being facetious. Obviously, we know that you'll already have a baseline, but you'll be now integrating a couple of another body or two up front, and maybe potentially someone on the back end as well. So, and never mind. With Appleton on the verge of coming back after the break, and I would say, even though there was a setback for David Gustafsson, he has to be a guy that's in the mix to come back after the break. We know that the coaching staff values Carson Kuhlman, or else he wouldn't be playing. He wouldn't have got the top 6 minutes, and he also wouldn't be getting the third line minutes that we believe will be reserved for Mason Appleton when he returns. So I don't know. I don't see Carson Kuhlman going back on waivers, but I could see him being the 13th forward, depending on how these other guys play. Now, what that means for Sam Gagner, I have no idea. And we also know that if their Jets are going to make trades for, whether it's 2 or 3 players, it's not only going to be prospects that are going on the move. There are going to have to be roster players that are on the way out. And yes, I know I am the captain of the Gus bus. I just don't see, and Dave, I'm sure you agree, the Jets have invested so much into his development. I don't see a scenario where he is placed on waivers. So even though Kevin Stenlund has, passed him on the depth chart right now, I don't see the Jets, putting him on waivers, because there's probably a team that would be claiming him, knowing that yes, he remains a project, But this is a project with a lot of really important qualities that are NHL ready. Yes,
and Gus Foss can play wing, right? Because we saw that when Stenlund was playing wing and Stenlund was moved up the middle, right, Kenny? So
for sure,
I agree with you. I think at the very least he's going to be your extra forward, but I think he'll probably end up back in the fourth line.
But then too, like looking deeper, naturally you think, well, what about Kyle Capobianco? I mean, they've got lots of depth on defense. Well, how much of that defensive depth do they have after the trade deadline? I mean, who is being moved out there? And if you have to move out one or two of those guys, now all of a sudden you are you've already lost Johnny Kovacevic. Are you nervous about, putting Capobianco on waivers and being claimed, and then all of a sudden one of or two of Chisholm, Sandberg, Heinola, one of those guys, right? And what if those guys are involved in a trade? So there's a lot of bouncing balls here. Which ones are you following and which ones are you valuing over the other? I mean, there's a lot of important decisions on the horizon, and we understand, guys. I mean, all teams have players on the periphery of the roster that they have depth players, and those depth players occasionally are claimed. We understand that, but you have to put yourself in a position where you're not hampering your depth while you're also augmenting your roster. So, I mean, that's what's been really interesting. And I know some of the chatters are saying, well, just waive everyone. Well, hey, I got plenty of notes, and I'm sure you guys did also. Oh, Mikey or Michael Asimont. Oh, will never be claimed. Why would he be claimed? Oh, guess what? Then he was claimed,
Have you seen that San Jose Sharks roster?
Well, again, and two, so this is the thing for me, guys. I mean, Michael Asimont was not brought in to be a high impact goal scorer. But here's the thing. Even if you're tanking openly or not openly, according to the commissioner.
Teams don't tank, apparently, despite everything we see.
Also, everybody loves that digital advertising, too.
And Asimont is perfect for the Sharks
because
he's got a motor that's running nonstop. So it's okay to be bad, but don't be bad and not try. So this is why a scout looked and said, this guy's going as hard as he can, as long as he can, every single game. Yeah. So is he going to be a 20-goal scorer? Absolutely not. Can he be a 5 to 10 goal scorer on the fourth line and give you some offense on your second power play? Can he play with skilled players? Oh, like he did with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois for a small sample. Yes, he can. So that's why, too. I mean,
bad teams need to pay NHL salaries, too.
But to me, it's more about the worker bee mentality, right? Sure. So Mike Greer is thinking, hey, you know what you don't want to have? Guys who are checked out and guys who are not giving effort all of the time, right? So that to me was why it was such a good fit. And I mean, too, so Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, I mean, so he's better at several things than Asimont. No doubt. He's faster. He's maybe a little bit more disruptive on the forecheck, and he's a better penalty killer. But by no means does he have better offensive instincts or better finishing ability. So what are you valuing and what role are you wanting these players to fill? Now, that is going to be the decision for Kevin Cheveldayoff and the coaching staff and everyone else as they huddle up. We know they had their pro meetings, they had their amateur meetings. These are the types of discussions that would have been happening. And it's funny. So we're talking about Sam Gagner and we're talking about offense not being there. Well, Sam Gagner's got 8 goals for the Jets. So does that mean you give Sam Gagner a game maybe either tonight or tomorrow against the Blues, or a Monday against the Blues? Now we got them playing on all the nights, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, Drew. Look at what I thought our minds were in lockstep. Ezzy, I thought you said our brains were working together here.
My brain shut off there for a second, Kenny.
I know what you're going to be doing on Sunday, Kenny, and it's going to be watching the conference championship.
No, it'll be. What are you talking about? He'll be celebrating Dancing Gabe's 60th birthday with me at the Moose game.
True.
Nice try, Drew.
Gabe, it's a big weekend for Gabe, no doubt. So, anyways, I think that this is such an interesting time for the Jets. And again, we know what the top 6 looks like. We know what probably 2/3 of the checking line looks like. And, Morgan Barron has played well in that role also. Do I put him in, permanent marker there? Do I have him in pen? Do I have him in pencil? I'm not 100% sure yet. But Morgan Barron's also a guy that if there's an injury or if you're protecting a lead, maybe you're moving him up in the lineup also. Yeah, I mean, and then too, so Menelainen, I think, some people are down on him. Oh, he doesn't score a lot either. And, he had a bad turnover in the other, in one of the games the other night. And there too. So it's so interesting, right? So the Jets have worked really hard this year. We've been pounding on this drum for 5 years plus. The Jets need a fourth line that can play 8 to 10 minutes. Well, now mostly they have had that, One of the games that line gets 2 goals and life is glorious. Yeah, one of them was an empty netter, sure. But it's a hard-working play, and also Stenlund wasn't playing on the fourth line when he got it, but fine. So the next night, the Jets only give up 2, but both goals come against the fourth line. And so when you're a coach, it's one of those things. Paul Maurice always said you can't just tread water. So yes, it's still an even wash for those guys. 2 on, 2 against in the 2 games. But when you give up 2 in the single game and you lose by 1, that's one of those games that makes it awfully difficult for the coaching staff to say, oh man, you know what? I got to lean on those guys more. They do lean on them more. They reward them. And yes, this is going to happen. This happens regularly for all teams. It's just one of those things that, and they were avoidable mistakes. I mean, again, Cody Glass's goal, perfect tip in, But, and that night, Stenlund, 7 of 9 in the circle. But the one loss, it goes right to Forsberg. Forsberg gets it back to the point. Yossi shoots it. Glass scores. So a couple things. Stenlund loses the draw. Cody Glass is his guy. So I'm not blaming Stenlund, but two things happened that, don't normally happen. And then he wasn't able to check the guy in front. And sure, it's a perfect tip. B, the winger closest to Forsberg is beaten to the puck that gets back to the point. And then C, the other winger is unable to break through and get into the shot lane. So I'm not blaming Stenlund at all. All 3 forwards in that situation didn't get their job done properly. I get it.
It speaks to the pace problem, though, that they were discussing yesterday.
Exactly. And this is not knocking those guys. It happens to first-line players also. But when you're a fourth-line player, you can't afford to have that happen twice in one game, especially when the Menelainen turnover was the one that did not exit the zone. It wasn't a great rim. I understand that also. So everyone shares in that responsibility. But for all the things Rick Bowness has been talking about, the reason why guys like that are replacing Perfetti and Ehlers on the boards trying to win those battles because they're big, strong guys, those plays have to get made. And again, that was a complete breakdown also after when the puck was kept in. I mean, that was also part of it. But those are things that you need to minimize because, games are so tight. In a game where Hellebuck probably outplayed Saros, but Saros won the goalie battle because he only gave up 1, right? So it's, again, like I said, these are things that happen all the time in the NHL, but it's part of the process and part of the building process. And then you're looking around saying, oh man, so when, this is a long-winded way of saying, I'm curious about Sam Gagner. I mean, what is his standing? He got to his 1,000th game. Mm-hmm. I'm all for the Jets using Sam Gagner in a kind of a Tampa Corey Perry role where you have some, when you have some load management. I think that's smart given the odometer reading on Sam Gagner.
Right.
But at the same time, you can't leave him out too long. And then when he plays on the fourth line, the identity is a little bit different because it's not, he's bringing a different skill set. He's still a very smart and conscientious player defensively, but he gives you an offensive element and he also can help the second power play. But also then they're not as physical and they're not going to be as fast and they're not going to be as disruptive probably on the forecheck. So what do you want from that fourth line? And there too, there's also time, and we've seen it on the, when Sam was in, sometimes he gets put on the third line because he's trying to help give a little bit more of an offensive tilt to Lowry and Barron, who both create plenty of scoring chances, but aren't as natural finishers, right? So you have lots of options, but what is your best option? That's what the Jets will be looking for in this next, let's use a 10-game block here. So I think it's super interesting where the Jets are and where they're trying to get to.
Saturday morning, you're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media.
That was a
platforms.
good visit to the buffet, by the way, Kenny.
The
Of all the
buffet-
visits to the buffet, that was maybe top 3 all time.
I'm very hungry, you guys. I'm very hungry. That's why I'm here. I come to eat on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
The buffet is open. Ken Wiebe of Kenny and Rennie and Sportsnet.ca is our guest as we're bellying up to it to talk about the Winnipeg Jets.
And I could use an Illegal Curve sandwich right now, by the way.
We can arrange for that to be sent your way there, as long as you have enough time for a pregame nap, because you can't chow that down and then expect to be at full strength for the rest of your day.
That's true.
Kenny, I love a good Vegas buffet like anyone, and let me tell you, you just clean that place out. I'm thinking through all the questions I have for you, and I'm like, okay, he just talked about that. He just talked about that. He just talked about that. Okay, hold on, that one. Nope, check that one off. But there was an area you didn't touch on that I'm curious about, and I'd like to get your insight into. So step back up to that buffet. It's been refilled. It's ready to go. You had some
crab
water.
legs are ready. Yeah, crab legs are ready.
A man who's had all he can eat.
No, Kenny's water bottle is keeping you hydrated in the chat, and you're keeping yourself hydrated. So we're good in that regard. Giving yourself a little time for a cough. But, the truth is, Ken, and people seem to lose their mind over the third pairing of the Jets, But I'm curious. I'm not going to ask you about the third pairing of the Jets because I'm more curious about your assessment of Neil Pionk right now. Because there's been a lot of talk about Neil Pionk and his game. I was watching a game. He doesn't look like he's 100%. His skating just doesn't look the way it normally is. I'm just curious as to what your assessment of Neil Pionk's game has been this season and whether you think he's capable of getting back to the Neil Pionk we saw 2 years ago.
Yeah, his game is at times chaotic in both ends. In a good way on the offensive end, he's been able to generate plenty of offense, and that is important. But right now, I would say Neil finds himself, he is the defensive version of Scheifele Connor Wheeler 2 years ago. Are you giving up more than you're getting? And right now, it feels like even though he has been having an offensively gifted season, the play in his own end is not at the level that we had been used to seeing when he was. And I often like to remind folks, whether it's in the chat room or on the old socials, we're basically 2 years removed from Neil Pionk being the best Jets defenseman. Like 2 seasons ago, that was the case. In his first season after the trade, he was also very good. But he hasn't been as good defensively, right? I mean, that's a fact. I mean, you can use the eye test, you can use whatever metrics you use can use underlying numbers, you can use boxcar stats. Right now, Neil Pionk his reads have not been as quick or sharp. His coverage has not been as sound as we have seen in the past. And at times he has not been as physical, which leads credence to what you mentioned, Dave, and I think I've written it a few times. I mean, Neil is what do we talk about in his early years, and even especially during the North Division year where he was so good against Connor McDavid at times. He has the junkyard dog mentality. He is a physical force, but do you know what you can't do when you're not as mobile, guys? You can't get to the place that you need to get to in order to make the hit or the seal or the pin along the boards. And to me, we know last year it was a broken foot for Neil Pionk. This year, I've been having trouble determining what the injury is. Is it a soft tissue? Is it a groin issue? Is it a knee issue? Is it an ankle issue? I don't know, but I do know a couple things that I see. I don't see the mobility, and I don't see him. This is the thing that's very odd. And for some folks who maybe haven't been noticing it, watch how little Neil Pionk is skating backwards in a game. Through the neutral zone and in the defensive zone, he's often pivoting, not to chase, but to angle. On his angles, what you see from Josh Morrissey, when he's defending, he's always skating backwards. But he's also the fastest skating player. So for me, Pionk was a guy who had mobility, and right now I don't see that same level of mobility. There are times when he looks like he's feeling better than others and he's moving well. I think he had a stretch of games where he looked like he was putting all that behind him, and then he had another stretch of games where it looked like he wasn't moving the same way. And this is very simple. This is not a dump on Neil Pionk. The Jets defense core as a whole has been better this year, but everyone has probably taken a turn where they, with the exception of Morrissey, I don't think he's really had a bad game this year, at least in my humble opinion. So everyone has had an issue or two during the course of the game. Mistakes are going to happen, especially at the NHL level. Like, there are players that can make you look bad on Wednesday night hockey. So of course they can make you look bad in the NHL. But I do think the thing with Pionk that people forget, like, this guy gives effort all of the time. And for those folks in the chat room saying, well, why not sit him down and give him a rest? I don't have the answer to that. I can only assume that the Jets believe that during the 10-day break, that will give Pionk enough time to get his body, healed, or maybe you can't do any more damage to it. Because if resting Pionk is going to help give you the best version of Pionk, then I think they would have already done that. Like, the Jets aren't just saying, hey, we don't have any other options here. We need Neil Pionk to power through, because we know Pionk is going to power through, because he did last year after he broke his foot on a shot from Jamie Benn. That's not the issue. No one's questioning his mentality or his, ability. But right now, he's not playing at a $6 million level. So the thing here that has been tough for the Jets in this stretch of years, and I use the word years intentionally, if the Jets can get Neil Pionk's A game at the same time they have Josh Morrissey's A game, so you had 2 great years of Pionk, and you're in the second great year of Morrissey, but they need to get those things to align and happen at the same time. And if that happens, guys, now all of a sudden all the calls for a top 4 defenseman at the trade deadline are not necessary, because Neil Pionk is the guy the Jets committed to on a contract. They essentially chose Neil Pionk over Andrew Kopp when it came to their prioritizing on a longer-term deal. They were banking on the first 2 years of Pionk being the new normal for him. There has been some regression in the last 2 years. We know last year it was related to injury. This year, I think it's related to injury, but I can't say for sure because no one has said it's been related to injury. But Rick Bowness was asked about it this week, and his answer was he thought if Neil was taking more of an offensive mentality, it would help his defensive game. To me, that was a little bit of a bait and switch to me. I think it's maybe look over. No. Don't worry about there. Look over here.
Yeah.
And I think there was some protection of his player there. And that's what coaches do. That's what good coaches do. But he also wasn't disputing the claim that he needed to be better, because he also said at the end of it, if he does that, he won't be put in so many, he didn't use the word, I'll use the word adverse because I don't remember the actual word that he used. He won't be putting himself in as many predicaments. Sorry, that's the term that he used. Right. If he does this better offensively, he's not going to be putting himself in as many predicaments defensively. So I think the Jets are acutely aware that Neil is not playing at that same level, but they're not obviously blaming Pionk for any of that. But Pionk also, like I said, his effort has never been in question. And like I said, there have been times, sorry, Dave, I know you said a long time ago, do I think he can get back to that level? I do, as long as he gets healthy during this 10-day break. And I don't think it will take that long to figure out if he is at a higher level or if his pace is at a higher level or any of those other things. But to me, the thing with Pionk, when he's playing well, he uses that, like I said, junkyard dog or pit bull mentality, where you notice him all over the ice. I've shared this theory with you guys before. This is not just a 20-game block. This is close to a 100-game block that goes back to December 5th, the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. He gets the suspension for the knee on Rasmus Sandin. Then he gets a knee to the head from Jason Spezza. Two things happened. First suspension of his career and first NHL concussion. But he did tell us all that wasn't his first concussion. So it's natural to be a little bit, I wouldn't use the word tentative, but less assertive after you've had an injury like that and you've been suspended, because you are such a reactionary and instinctual player when it comes to the physical side of the game. And now all of a sudden, when your instinct was to accidentally stick out your leg and someone got hurt and hurt their knee and you're suspended, but now you only sit out your suspension because you have a concussion, you got a lot of things going on in your head, and not all of them lead to, you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to play a physical game right now and hammer the next guy that I see. And then compounding the problem was that he got hurt shortly after he returned and then couldn't deliver the type of hits that we've been used to seeing. So I'm very curious. And Dave, quite frankly, it might be the most, we're talking about what's the optimal top 6. If whether or not Neil Pionk can find his A game, that might be the most important question between now and March 3rd for the Winnipeg Jets, because of how wide open the West is, and because this is a great opportunity for the Winnipeg Jets to take a run, but they need Neil Pionk to be their second best defenseman during the last 32 games. And I don't think there is anyone that can argue with that, whether that's a coach or a player, a fan, or anything. If the Jets want to win 4 rounds, guys, Neil Pionk has to be their second or at worst third best defenseman.
Hold on, Drew. I just want to say, I'm not going to say that Kenny went on for a while, but he started his question. The sun was on the right side of his head.
Oh man, yeah. I got question. Do you want me to close those blinds here? Do I need to go over and close the blinds?
You're fine. Speaking of March 3rd, Kenny, it's 5 weeks away, give or take. I guess 5 weeks less a day almost, given that it's, for whatever reason, the trade deadline is now on a Friday this year, which is odd to me. But
it's great for us, Drew.
I don't have a problem. I agree. I'm just saying it's odd. I don't know.
You'll have a lot of buffet material for the Saturday morning, and for the Friday. I'm sure you're doing a Friday show also.
I'm sure we will as well. There's no question. But in any event, I think actually the Jets play that Friday.
In
Edmonton.
They're in Edmonton. That's the Edmonton back-to-back.
It's going to be like a 24-hour live stream, boys. 24-hour live stream. Yeah. Just keep rolling. Keep rolling.
Kenny, according to Drew, the game's actually on Saturday night, not Friday.
And the deadline might be on Sunday. The deadline might be on Sunday.
Exactly. They're actually playing in Edmonton Saturday at noon, and they come and play in Winnipeg at 6 o'clock. It's a real weird scheduling that day. Speaking of March 3rd, we talked about the need for I think upgrade to the forwards. In your mind, Kenny, or if you were circling a team or circling a player or two, who do you think the Jets have an eye on? As I think Kenny's fiddling with his microphones right now. I don't know if you heard me. We can't hear you. There you go.
He's back.
I think you're coming through 2 speakers or something. I can see the puzzled look on your face.
Sorry, back. We're yes.
There we go.
I have no problem with having Kenny on the PA system.
Sorry, I see your technical difficulties, and I raise them as I try. Okay. Sorry, my battery was looking, and then I unplugged the wrong the wrong cord naturally. For me, I'm super curious on which mode of transportation the Jets will be taking for the trade deadline. Will they be using the Colorado Avalanche / Tampa Bay Lightning model, where you go with not necessarily the biggest game hunting piece? Mm-hmm. So for me, let's use the examples here. So last year, the Colorado Avalanche got Josh Manson to bolster their top 4 on the back end. They needed some stiffness to their, to add to your Samuel Girards, your Cale Makars, guys like that. Or, they also got up front, they got Arturi Lehkonen. They didn't go out and get, so the rumor was they were interested in Giroux. Do you know what they did do? They went out and got a guy, the Avalanche had plenty of offense. So you know what they went out and got? Checking. And a checking line player who could score important goals. And there was Arturi Lehkonen in the conference final, delivering the game winner for the second year in a row. And Jets fans are quite familiar with the previous year when he delivered to get his team to the conference final. Right. So they got Lehkonen. They also got Andrew Cogliano, a 4th-line checker who could play on the 3rd line and was also on their top penalty-killing unit. They also got Nico Sturm a little bit earlier, but he was a little bit more of an early. I think he was picked up a little bit earlier in a move for Tyson Jost. So I don't know if that was necessarily, we would call that a deadline move. It was same thing. They were looking for a bigger, stronger guy who could play on the 4th line, come in at center, play wing, in and out of the lineup. So they went with the more, I wouldn't just say, it wasn't just bigger parts. They didn't need more parts. They went for specific roles because they knew what their team was great at.
They needed a new carburetor. They went and got a new carburetor rather than a brand new engine.
Exactly. And for the Lightning go out and get Nick Paul, right? So what was happening with the Lightning last year? Their team was looking great. plenty of offense. You got Vasilevsky in net. You have a very good defense core. So you're looking for a third line that is similar to the third lines that helped you win 2 consecutive Stanley Cups. And that third line included Yanni Gourde, Blake Coleman, and Barclay Goodrow, all 3 of which were gone either in trade or free agency or in the expansion draft. Sorry, 2 went in free agency, 1 went in expansion. There were no trades involved. So they went and addressed a specific need there. They also got Brandon Hagel, who played on a checking line last year, but now plays on the top line with Nikita Kucherov and has been a point-a-game player. The biggest thing with Brandon Hagel, guys, even though people were raising their eyebrows at the time, he brought cost certainty because he was on a lower valued contract for, I think, a 4-year span.
Right.
So why did they give up that, high draft picks to get Brandon Hagel, who was a 20-goal guy with the Chicago Blackhawks? Because they have a bunch of guys making between $8 and $10 million, and they need somebody making around $2 million that can be very productive and aligns with their Stanley Cup winning window, right? So do the Jets go with that mode, right? Do you go with Timo Meier? Do you go with Bo Horvat? Or do you need more of the Ivan Barbashev, a guy that gives you physical nature and offense and won a Stanley Cup? Can you get Ryan O'Reilly? Ryan O'Reilly to me is super interesting on a number of levels. Did a little bit of training with Mark Scheifele during the lockout. We know he is a gamer. He is yes, Jordan Binnington played well at the start of the series, but to me, Ryan O'Reilly is the reason that series went 6 games, right? I mean, Ryan O'Reilly, he's the reason he was the Conn Smythe winner. But last year against Colorado in the second round,
right,
in a series where St. Louis probably doesn't have, we know how good Colorado was.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan O'Reilly did a great job against McKinnon. I mean, I don't think he was on the ice for the end-to-end roof job, but again, he was great in that series. Same way Ryan O'Reilly lived in Mark Scheifele's pocket in 2019. The reason why Mark Scheifele didn't produce the same way he did the previous year when the Jets went to the conference final? He had to play against Ryan O'Reilly for 6 games. It didn't work out very well at the time. So O'Reilly is interesting to me. And when it comes to the defense, there's a bunch of... Sorry, I'm going to have to share this too with you guys. I mean, on Kenny and Rennie the other night after the game, John Bartlett was on with us. He used Jean-Gabriel Pageau as an example of a guy who might be an exceptional fit for the Jets. He's not going to replace Lowry, but he would be able to play center, be able to play wing. If you wanted to put Lowry on the wing, you could. He got a right-handed face-off guy. He has played in big games before, and he gives you some offense, and he can check the lights out. So maybe he is this year's version of Arturi Lehkonen. You have a 30-year-old player. I believe he has for sure 2 more years left after this one, might be 3, at 5.5. So it's a reasonable salary number. And then it gives you a little bit of backfill also. And I get it. I mean, we know Pierre-Luc Dubois has been in the news a lot, and people, think that he could be gone as early as this summer. We don't know that just yet. But you need some insurance. So if you're going to get Bo Horvat insurance, or you're going to get Pageau as insurance, they didn't, obviously different roles and different styles of players, but those are the things you have to be looking at if you're the Winnipeg Jets. And hang on one second. I look like I got to close the blinds here. This is crazy.
I was going to say we haven't seen a disparity in the color on Ken's head since he returns from the Manitoba Golf Tour every summer, and he's got that sunburn look when he gets inside for the first day of training camp.
Do we have a potential new nickname for Kenny here? The Shadow.
The Shadow. Oh, I could deal with that.
I was looking like an alien there. I couldn't handle it anymore. It was.
You didn't. I said, Ken, we haven't seen a disparity in your head color since you returned from the Manitoba Golf Tour every summer.
Fair. Well played.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it really is a fascinating trade deadline, and we got to let you go here, Ken, in a couple minutes.
Whatever you need.
You look at it. I mean, there's so many teams. Or the West is so wide open. There's no great team in the West. Colorado, I mean, isn't the same Colorado that we saw last year. At least they haven't been so far this year. And then you factor in all the teams, despite what Bettman would say, that are tanking because they want to tank earlier so that they can get better odds to winning the Bedard sweepstakes. So to me, it wouldn't surprise me if the trade activity picks up sooner rather than later, and maybe it's a bit busier before the deadline. I know all the teams usually in the GM's deadline hunt and wait for that last day, but it wouldn't surprise me if you start seeing things picking up a little bit sooner than you would say in a compared to maybe last year or
the Canucks,
or
as Kenny would agree with, the Canucks are a ticking time bomb right now, right? Like everybody's just, I think a lot of teams are just circling the Canucks right now, Kenny, right? So I don't think anybody would be surprised if they start moving players in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, the problem for me, Drew, is the same. It's not a problem with your assertion. We always expect this will be, you know what? This is going to be the year the trades start happening a month in advance. Right. And then we're waiting patiently until the days before. And the reason for that, and I think one of the reasons why the Jets don't have to be that team, even though, yes, there are some benefits to accruing salary cap space on a daily basis to extend your space, because they're not an LTIR for the first time in a couple of years here, is that I think the last count, it was 17 teams in LTIR, and they have to wait, or they don't have to wait, but their problem, pardon me, guys, their problem.
Buffet's coming back up, folks.
Yeah, apparently. Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
You okay?
Issue, yeah, I think so. I think you don't have to call 911 here, I don't think.
We'll just dial 91 and then wait to press the last one.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm totally fine. Sorry. Those teams can't afford the bigger tickets. So the reason why they have to wait is because most other teams don't want to, withhold the 50% salary, right? So everyone's saying, "Oh yeah, well and even too, the one this week that got my attention. Oh well, the Leafs are in on Timo Meier. Well, how? How are the Leafs going to be in on a guy who will carry a $10 million QO next year? I mean, even if they're in LTIR, I just don't see how that. I mean, maybe if there's some retention, I know his salary's lower this year, but to me that was
Toronto would be the last team, Kenny, that you would think of with Timo Meier. Like at least like the
you know what, the Leafs need another cap room. They need a fifth player who makes between $8 and $12 million up front as a forward. No, I mean I get it, and it's things that we want to be talking about, but. So anyways, the long-winded way of saying that a lot of teams have trouble squeezing in players and have any room in this when it comes to salary, and B, they need to wait as long as possible, probably because they want the prices to go down. So Drew, I agree with the premise completely, and that's why maybe the Jets are in a bit more of a beneficial situation, right? Because they're projected to have over 10 million and maybe 11, and by the time that Appleton is activated and they reduce another salary, those numbers are going up, provided there are not a lot of injuries left, because the Jets also ran with a roster of 29 players and had nobody in LTIR, right, which impacted their ceiling, right? I mean, so they were carrying more salary and it sort of inhibited what they could do in terms of the longer term thing, but now they're kind of back on track. So anyways, I know that
Kenny, I hate to do this to you, my friend.
No, I'm clipped. It's okay. We got to go.
The buffet is closed.
Go out and improve the team. There you go. You know what?
Drew,
when I see that,
did Drew print that on a laser-jet printer?
Drew, when I see that sign, I run with my plate, and the security guard, the security person. Dave talked about Vegas. There's somebody chasing you around, but I've got one more plate to get to.
Sir, please leave the trays. Don't take the tray to the table, sir.
Mr. Weed, we know you paid for the breakfast buffet, but it's time for the lunch buffet, and you got to go.
Yeah,
Kenny,
exactly.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, boys. It was a lot of fun, and we'll have another talk before, maybe after the deadline, or maybe before. We'll see. We'll see. Appreciate you being together, and don't forget, Monday. The game is Monday.
Monday. Let me write it down. Monday. Yes, I got it.
And also, don't forget about Kenny and Rennie post game after tonight's game between the Jets and Flyers.
After we do our thing, Kenny and Rennie do their thing, and we all do it in the copacetic, kumbaya manner, as per always.
Have a tremendous weekend, boys. Always great to be with you.
Thanks,
you too, Kenny.
Take care. There he goes. Let's go to break. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live this Saturday morning.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show this Saturday morning. We're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms. It's gonna suck next time.
It's gonna suck next time I'm in Vegas and they go, "Mr. Manuk, sorry, there's nothing left in the buffet. Mr. Weeb was here before you."
Well, Dave, you can walk around. I can lend you this if you want. You can just walk around with your buffet.
No, because then they'll close.
No, from Yee's Buffet in Polo Park Mall.
No, this is from the computer and print that I'm talking to you on, and the printer that's next to me.
I have a question.
Wow. Drew has a printer. Wow, someone's doing well.
I know.
Are you a prop comic?
I am a prop comic. Just call me Gallagher. Apparently, I'm going to smash a watermelon later on. But
by the way, Drew, I sent you I had you a page. Did you get it? Talking about technology. Well, Ezzy just made fun of you for having a printer, so I'm talking about your pager.
Oh, you're talking about my pager. Oh, I get it now. Yeah, that wasn't.
Well, it's not really great. It's not really great when you're sitting there with a blank look on your face.
Well, I didn't get the joke. I mean, it was just.
Well, Ezzy's talking about technology.
Your rotary dial phone.
Thank you, Ezzy.
Okay, now you're at least getting in. Now he's supporting you a little bit. Before that, I didn't know what the hell you were.
Well, the problem was Ezzy normally would have jumped in quicker, but he's still chewing. He's still masticating his granola bar.
Nice little strawberry Nutri-Grain bar.
Yeah, which, for the record, is 50% in his mouth and 50% on my floor.
Nutri-Grain bars are like one of those things that, like, if I have those in my house, like, they'll be gone. Like, I bought them yesterday. I've already had like 5.
You know, they're for your kids, right? Like, primarily the reason
that they don't really like. No, I get granola bars for my kids. I eat the Nutri-Grain bars. They don't really like them as much.
Just for the record, and you know that just because it has the word Nutra in it, it doesn't mean it's healthy. I just want to make sure that you're clear on that. Like the time that we had to explain to you that Kraft dinner that you bought at 7-Eleven was not actually a healthy
and
meal.
8 at 2 in the morning.
Yes, we just want to make sure that you're the dietitian. That you need to consult with us, Dave and I, who are your official dietitians, to determine what is and what isn't actually healthy food for you.
Yeah, Kraft dinner is definitely not healthy, and neither.
I have the audio of you saying, "quote Kraft dinner, it's noodles and cheese. What's wrong with that?" I have that clip readily available, and
the most important thing is my kids love it, and when I give it to them, they eat it. So that's really all I care about at this point. My health is not really important; it's more so about my kids' health.
No, that's good. That's important that you acknowledge that at the very least. Anyways, that was a great trip to the buffet with Kenny. It's always a good time getting together with him. The post-game show later tonight after the Jets and the Philadelphia Flyers around 8:45 p.m. tonight. Ezra
Excited to come over and watch it with you, Drew.
You are not allowed in my house, no matter what you think. But Ezra and yours truly will be here for the post-game show. We're giving Dave M the night off to do whatever it is Dave M does on the night off, the deep, dark secrets that we don't need to know about. But you talk about it. It's sort of we're 75 minutes into the show, and we really haven't discussed tonight's game at all. The forward lines. We briefly touched on it with Kenny in the course of that interview, talking about the optimal top six and what it looks like.
Let's just watch morning skate, Drew. Oh wait.
Well, there is no morning skate today, Dave. So unfortunately, we can't just.
Is this the first time ever this has happened? It's obviously not, but this has not happened very often. The Jets almost always have a morning skate.
They usually have a morning.
I mean, obviously, other than a back-to-back.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Or an afternoon game. Yes, this is. It is unusual.
Murat said that Murat. I said as he was like, it felt like it was the first time. Murat said they sometimes will do this on the road. Obviously, not in a back-to-back situation, but I can't recall where they don't have an availability. Now, I'm not saying them not skating is unusual because that's. I mean, it's still a little unusual, especially whatever. But I just thought maybe. I mean, I guess maybe Rick Bowness didn't love the pace yesterday and wanted to save it a little bit today. But anyways, it is definitely unusual. And like I said, if to not have the availability, like to wait till 3:30 to have the availability, that again, that's not unusual when there's no, like when it's an afternoon game or it's early or whatever. Yeah. But it is what it is.
The pace is obviously what we started the show with. It's obviously what's going to be. I think people are going to be looking for that to start the game. How are the Jets playing? How are the Jets skating early in the game, because that is where they've been lacking, and they haven't been crisp, and they haven't been executing to the degree that they need to execute at in order to be the most successful. But I want to, what are you guys expecting for the forward lines tonight? Are you expecting the same, similar to what they were towards the end of the game against Buffalo, or you think that that Rick Bowness is going to maybe reconsider everything? Not obviously you're not going to see Saku Manalainen playing the top six right now, but how do you think the top six is going to look, I guess, entering today's game? Because we really won't know until puck drop.
I think Saku Manalainen is going to get elevated to the first line. That's what I think is going to happen, Drew. No, I mean, look at Kenny said that when we had him on, right? Like, know which players are going to be in the top six. It's just a question of if you're going to move maybe Ehlers onto the line with Connor and Dubois, because Kenny nailed it on the head. I mean, the pairs are Scheifele and Ehlers right now, and Connor and Dubois. So it's really a question of, is Wheeler going to be moved off of that line? Is Ehlers going to be moved off of that line for each other? Essentially, I don't think, Dave, we're expecting, Wheeler to be moved down to the third line. I mentioned this, on Thursday night, and you guys agreed, and I think a lot of people in the chat agreed. Like, Lowry, Barron, and Kuhlman is working for right now. And when Mason Appleton comes back, Dave, after the break, maybe Mason Appleton goes back to the third line with Lowry and Barron. Maybe he, starts off in the fourth line and you keep Kuhlman up there. And yes, I mean, Kuhlman is not a natural goal scorer, but you look at how he plays, I think he's a good complement to Lowry and Barron, right? Kuhlman works his buns off. He gets in the corner, digs up pucks, and, he can chip in the odd, goal or two, but nobody's going to confuse him with Kyle Connor. That's for sure. So I like Kuhlman right now on that third line with Lowry and Barron. If anything, maybe you bring in Sam Gagner into the lineup. And I don't know who comes out of the lineup because, I've liked Axel Jonsson-Fjällby on that fourth line. Does Manalainen come out of the lineup? I'm not sure. I wouldn't expect anything major, Drew. But going forward, the last, 30 or so games of the season, I still personally like Ehlers, Dubois, and Connor, simply because forget the whole, every team has to have a super line, or, some people don't like the idea of super lines and they like the idea of spreading the wealth a little bit. But how dominant was that line? And Scheifele, Wheeler, and Perfetti, Scheifele, Wheeler, that was a really good line earlier in the season. So again, I would go back to that. But again, I don't know if we'll see that tonight. I agree with what Kenny's saying. Ehlers with Scheifele gives you more speed on that line, right? So that's clearly, the obvious why you would keep Ehlers, Scheifele, and Wheeler together, but it hasn't been working. It wasn't really working at points on the road trip. It certainly wasn't working a couple nights ago against Buffalo. So that would be what I would expect, Drew. I think Logan Stanley, Kenny was agreeing, and especially Sandberg stayed late after practice on Friday. I would expect no changes on the back end. Maybe Gagner comes into the lineup, and maybe in game you see some movement between, the first three lines, but I don't think we're going to see maybe as many changes as some people would like to see. But that's just my opinion.
To me, Dave, and as you referenced it, Dubois, Connor, and Ehlers, the opponents, by and large, didn't have much of an answer for that. So, why not go back to that, right? When things are, have been a bit of a struggle. To me, that would be where I would go back to. And I know that, Scheifele and Scheifele, Wheeler, and Perfetti might not have, breakneck speed like the other line does. But I mean, I didn't think that they were bad together. There was certainly some playmaking ability on display there. That would be how I would do it. But it doesn't seem to be where Rick Bowness wants to go, which is a bit of a surprise to me.
Well, I mean, but if you, again, I'm just going to think back to what Rick Bowness said. And I think his thought was, that line works. And so when push comes to shove, and I think the idea is the Jets are, as we've talked about, they don't have a guaranteed playoff spot, but it looks pretty guaranteed based on how they've banked points in that standings bank, like we like to talk about. And I think what Rick Bowness is trying to figure out and trying to give some latitude to and some runway with is, how do these lines work on a long-term basis? How can we see the chemistry with these guys in the playoffs when we know that, this combination works optimally? And so you'll know that in the playoffs, my guess is, like, as you just said, and like you're questioning why you don't go back to it now. I think when you need to, like I said, ahead of the playoffs, you want to say, okay, we can do that. But I think right now they're working within the framework of trying to get, because we know you're not going to stay healthy. We know that you're going to need to be able to be flexible and adaptable. And I think adaptable is the key term, because I think you don't want to be heavily reliant on one line for 82 games. And then, first game of the playoffs, you lose your top line right winger and nobody else has any chemistry because they haven't played, you haven't mixed and matched. And I think that is why Rick Bowness is not necessarily going back to what has worked so well for them right now, because of the idea of just saying, listen, we need to make sure that we've got a first line and a second line, a 1A and a 1B that work well and are able to intermingle in that way. If you need to get those guys going, you can do it in this way.
And just to add to Gagne, the last game that Gagne played was against Toronto. So he's been a healthy scratch the last 3 games. So I don't know if you guys agree or if, the people watching right now agree, but I would expect it to probably be Manalainen that comes out for Gagne. It's probably Janssen Fjällby or Manalainen. I don't think anybody's expecting Kevin Stenlund to come out of the lineup, but just, food for thought that Gagne has been a healthy scratch the last 3 games, and he does provide more offense than Manalainen. So we'll see what happens.
Well, what I like about Gagne is that when he comes in, and I mean, yes, he's got a bit of a different skill set than some of those other guys that you just mentioned as possible replacements, but I think he's almost got, not that he's the conscience of the team, because that's probably overstating things too much, but he's got
he's part of the leadership of the team, that's for sure.
Well, sure, because he's a veteran guy and he's got 1,000 games and everything else, and he's been up and down and he's been through all the battles in this league. But he's got the ability sort of just to, see the forest through the trees, if you want to use that analogy. He's not necessarily always locked in the moment. He can sort of take a step back, and I don't mean, take a skating step back, but he can sort of just, recalibrate everything and get everybody sort of onto the same page and see what he's seeing. He can't perform at the same level that he used to perform at. I mean, we remember that he was, a tremendous offensive talent back in his prime. On some bad
and he still
teams.
chipped in offensively this year as well.
Yeah,
he's just had stretches where, I mean, look at guys like Gagne can play in the penalty kill. Manalainen can play in the penalty kill. Kenny nailed it. I mean, Manalainen gives you the size, a little bit more physicality if you want, right? But at this point, guys, you haven't gotten enough scoring you haven't received enough scoring from your bottom 6. Right. But, and to me, like that would make you think that there's a good chance that Gagne comes back into the lineup tonight.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So he's not going to be able to go through the grind for 82 games a year at the same level. There's going to be dips just by nature of him getting older. But I think when he can, when he sits for a few games, he can then come back. And generally speaking, when he's come back in the lineup after sitting for a few games, Dave, he's been able to contribute. He's been able to sort of he has the legs, he's got the fresh legs, and he's such a smart hockey player that he's able to take advantage of matchups, because he's going to be matched up against other teams' bottom pairs by and large, or other teams' third or fourth lines, but his intelligence maybe allows him to take advantage of those situations. So for a Jets team that is struggling a little bit offensively and struggling, it's right now it's a grind and it's a slog and they're sort of stuck in the mud a little bit. I can see him coming back in and being able to sort of pull the team a little bit out of that just by virtue of his intelligence and his hockey sense contributing to the bottom of the Jets lineup.
Not to borrow a basketball phrase, but the whole idea of load management, especially with a guy like, Sam Gagner, who has a lot of mileage on the vehicle. So I think it's not a bad thing. I mean, and as he said it, you need goal scoring from your bottom six. And so it's not as if anybody is lighting the lamp sufficiently. You're like, well, you can't take them out. And don't get me wrong, as Ken said, and we've talked about, there are guys who play specific roles and who can contribute in ways other than scoring. And that's why, look, we talk about the Jets penalty kill. It's one of the best penalty kills in the NHL this season. So, and a lot of that is coming obviously from your fourth line and from your third line guys. So those guys play important roles, but we often say you can't survive in the NHL with just two lines that score. Sometimes you can, but generally the real upper echelon teams have a third line that can contribute goal scoring, and the Jets need that consistently. And we've talked about it. How many times have we said how many partners has Adam Lowry had to play with? I mean, we talk about chemistry. If there's one guy who can lament the idea that he hasn't had the opportunity really to develop chemistry, I mean, obviously Morgan Barron for a stretch, but he had to deal with injury. But is Adam Lowry on that third line? And I think for the Jets, that's the key, is getting that consistency on that third line, but also getting that production from the third line. And then if you get that production from the third line and you have those guys contributing as role players on your PK, and then you have that fourth line, which is, again, occasionally contributing with guys like Sam Gagner and Kevin Stenlund, Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, whatever it is, David Gustafsson, however you kind of intermingle and sprinkle those guys, I think ultimately that's what you need from this Jets team. We've talked about it for years. You can't have a third line that's a checking line and a fourth line that's a checking line. It's not like that in the new NHL. You need a third line that can contribute.
Well said, Dave Minuk. The Jets and the Philadelphia Flyers later tonight, 6 o'clock puck drop, post-game show right back here on the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, right around 8:45 p.m. Central Time, give or take a minute or two. When we return, Anthony Sanfilippo is a longtime friend of this program. He's covered the Philadelphia Flyers for certainly over a decade, probably closer to 2 decades at this point in time. He's going to join us to talk about the Jets' opponent tonight, the Flyers. He wrote a really interesting article for crossingbroad.com that lays out
it's hotter than the fire above my head.
It's hotter than the fire above Dave's head. It really lays out the difficulties and the old boys network that is permeating the Flyers organization and maybe holds a significant element of the responsibility for the Flyers' recent struggles.
It's time to head back to the buffet, boys.
Yeah, Anthony will join us next to talk about that. Saturday morning, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit Rolly's.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsberg, and we're pleased to welcome to the program from crossingbroad.com our very good friend, Anthony Sanfilippo. And I don't know what is happening at the moment. But
didn't you said I had to look like I was wearing my Sunday best, right?
That's true. That's true. I did say you do have to look like you're wearing your Sunday best. So that's your Sunday best.
This is Anthony Incognito, right?
I went with the mullet and everything else, right? See,
you look like an Eagles fan more than I would say right now. Getting ready
you
for
called
the
me
game
an Eagles
tomorrow.
fan? All right, I got to take all this crap off now.
Love it.
There you go. You got to be cursing a little bit more as well if you're an Eagles fan.
Not an Eagles fan, that's for sure. So
you're not an Eagle. Okay.
No.
What's that sweatshirt? Does that say Savannah?
Savannah. I was just in Savannah, Georgia for.
Isn't it a great place?
For the last 8 days. Yeah, it was awesome.
I've been there. I think I've been there 3 or 4 times. It's really just you can feel the history in Savannah. Just a wonderful place.
It's a cool town, man. It really is. Definitely a cool town.
Yes, exactly.
How you boys doing?
Yeah, Anthony.
Good to see you.
It's been a while, my friend.
I know we've talked, but we've not actually physically. Well, we're not
Yes.
really physically seeing each other, but we're seeing each other at least this time. It's not just on the phone, so that's good.
That's right. It's nice to see you in person, and we appreciate the costume that you wore. We would take off our costume, but this is tragically just what we look like. Unfortunately, this is just the way it is for us.
That's right. That's right.
Obviously, we brought you on, Anthony. The Jets and the Flyers, they meet again tonight. It's the second time in what is that? About a week or so, a little less than a week. Their second game in a row. And you wrote a great piece, and we just tweeted this out on our Twitter feed at Illegal Curve. You wrote a great piece about the Flyers and their current presence, stuck in purgatory. Is the headline. The Flyers are stuck in purgatory because of decades relying on king-making, quote, network. And it's a well-researched, well-written, strong opinion piece that you wrote for crossingbroad.com. And so obviously I read it and we had to bring you on, and the timing is great with the Jets and the Flyers tonight. But, I guess the premise of your article, and correct me if I'm misstating it, is that the Flyers are so insular with their leadership team that it's impacting and negatively impacting their performance on the ice, and has been for a long while now.
Well, yes. I mean, you're mostly correct. So basically, the reason that people are like, well, why did you write that now? You could have written that any time in the last decade and still been just as accurate, right? and the reason is that I've always kind of been a defender of Bob Clark and Paul Holmgren as general managers, as vice presidents, as president, whatever title that they've ever had, because there was a history of success, maybe not winning a Stanley Cup, but the teams were constantly competitive, constantly among the teams that were competing for the Stanley Cup. And so I was never, I don't want it to seem like it's a way of me like tearing them down individually. The problem here is that the Flyers have been stuck in this malaise, for lack of a better word. really for a decade, with the lone exception being the lockout, or the pandemic year when they went to the bubble and they actually won a playoff round and went 7 games in the second round with the Islanders. With that one lone exception, the last decade, they've been mediocre at best. And it really came to a head, with the whole Ivan Provorov situation a little over a week ago, I guess a week and a half ago now at this point, when he didn't come out for warm-ups. Obviously, it's been all over North America, but he didn't come out for warm-ups in the Pride jersey on Pride night. And the management of the Flyers knew about it a week in advance and chose not to share that information with anybody in the business side, which includes their communications department, nor did they share it with ownership. And it didn't get to those folks until the media contacted them at the game that night. And so they were ill prepared. And so the rationale for the story to me is that it's gotten so bad now that these folks who are in the management type positions feel they're so infallible that they would not even include their own people on what turned out to be a major international story, right? And so the reason that they do that is because they feel like they can't be touched. And why do you feel that way? Well, you feel that way because you used to have ownership oversight in the form of Ed Snyder that you no longer have anymore, right? I mean, the ownership of this team, Comcast doesn't really care. The person they have kind of running it, Dave Scott, is hit or miss when he's around. He doesn't like to get involved in these bigger issues. So it's since Ed's passing, it has festered, and it's gotten to a point where there's been a lot of infighting, a lot of people pulling for somebody to fail kind of thing, right? But when you have this kind of thing happen, and everybody in that hockey operations department rallies around keeping it a secret until the last possible moment, that tells you it's gone too far.
Yeah.
And factions. So that was why the timing of the story was what it was. And I started off really just wanting to focus on Clark, Holmgren, Barber, and Lombardi, since they are the 4 senior advisors. But as I started doing it, and I started going through the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of thing, right, with this, I couldn't believe at how much bigger it got, and it just kept growing and growing and growing, that these people were in different cities together and who was with who, and they hired this person and they get fired and they come back to Philadelphia, and it was crazy. Mm-hmm. And that was why I was like, wow, the fans, when they see this, are going to go nuts, because this is 1,500 words of a 3,500 word document is just going to be this list. And it's crazy. So yeah, I mean, that was the reason I put it together. And that's why I say nothing's going to change until they have a different approach, because otherwise it's going to be the same thing that it's been for the last, 40 some years, right?
In Edmonton, Anthony, if you want to you look at a parallel, for the longest time, the Oilers only hired within, the 1980s Oilers Boys Club. Is that a similar sort of a tactic that the Flyers are using here?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that they always hire within the boys club of who played for the team, but it is a very small circle of who makes those decisions. So when you look at it right now, Bob Clark and Paul Holmgren, they are not involved in the day-to-day operation as far as who's going to be in the lineup, who's going to be on the roster, who's being traded, who's being signed as a free agent, who's being drafted. They're not involved. Are they sitting at the draft table? Yeah. Do they get called in for, to be advisors? Yeah, but they're not in that day-to-day thing. But what they are is they are determining who's running the show. They are deciding, here's who your GM is, here's who your coach is. Chuck Fletcher had no interest in hiring John Tortorella last year. None whatsoever. He had other candidates that he wanted to hire that were lesser names. But because the Flyers had such a disaster of a season last year, ownership felt it needed a name at coach to kind of get people talking about the Flyers again. And to their credit, it's worked in the sense that they are a little bit more competitive and there are more butts in seats this year. So in that regard, it's worked for them, right? But this is not a relationship that's a good relationship between general manager and coach. It just isn't. They don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. But who made that call? Ownership made that call. Ownership doesn't know. right? They don't know what to do. So who do they rely on? They rely on the voices of Clark and Holmgren and Barber and Dean Lombardi, who are the 4 senior advisors. So those 4 guys are determining who the coach is. Those 4 guys are telling ownership, don't fire Chuck Fletcher right now. Give him a chance. He's going to get this right. He's going to get this right. But he's been in place for 5 years, and he still hasn't gotten it. Nothing has gotten right. It's gotten a lot worse. So, like, what makes you think it's going to get any better anytime soon? So it's those voices in the ear of ownership that need to be stopped. That's ownership needs to make a determination and say, okay, listen, we're going to go in a new direction. Thank you for your time. You want to be ambassadors, come out and shake hands and kiss babies. Okay, fine. But making management decisions, you guys can no longer do that. That's what needs to happen.
And you just mentioned Torts there, Anthony, and I'm glad you did, because I wanted to ask you about Torts. And as you know, this is, for some people who don't know, it's been a very unique situation in Philadelphia in that you have some of your best players who haven't played a single game this year. Obviously, Sean Couturier, Cam Atkinson, Ryan Ellis. And I think there's probably, and you would know much better than we would, there's probably been a lot of talk in Philly about how different this year could have been if you had even one of those players, right? Especially Couturier, who's arguably your best all-around forward. But I wanted to ask you, how you think Torts has done the job he's done with this team, considering that you don't have Couturier, and Ellis, is arguably your most well-rounded defenseman, right? So how would you assess what he's done with this group? They're obviously not currently in a playoff spot. They have some work to do to get into the playoffs, and they'll have to pass a team like the Sabres. And as a second part of that question, how safe is his job? I think he signed a 3-year contract or a 2-year contract, but considering that, as you mentioned, Chuck Fletcher and Torts don't see eye to eye, like, how safe is he right now?
Yeah, I think Torts is fine. I think that when you look at what he's done this season, how can you not think he's done a heck of a job? This team is full of young players, full of really AHL types too on the back end of the roster, and they're competitive. They win. They beat the teams they're supposed to beat. They have a winning record against non-playoff teams, right? Like a significant winning record. And while they have a losing record against teams that are currently sitting in a playoff spot, if you look at those games, they've gone overtime with them 6 times. They've lost by 1 goal, I think, total of 11 or 12. I have to update it, check and see, because the last couple of games have been 1-goal games. Like, they are in games, and it's all because of Torts' system. And they are, for the most part, bought in. There's a couple of guys I know it made a lot of hay when he benched Kevin Hayes, who you guys are familiar with from his time in Winnipeg. But aside from that, and maybe 1 or 2 other guys, like, they're all in with Torts. They buy into this and they believe it. And so you look at this team and say, they shouldn't be as good as they are, which isn't great, but they shouldn't be where they're at. They should be one of the bottom 5 teams in the NHL, and they're not, because Tortorella has done a great job coaching them. And they've gotten good goaltending, too. I don't want to take anything away from, Carter Hart for the most part for the year. Sam Urson, who came up and played a half dozen games and looked really, really good in those games. So, goaltending's been good, too. But it's really been the coach and his system that these players have bought into. So I think he's done a great job. He signed a 4-year contract, actually, so he's got 3 more seasons after this one. And it's going to be interesting to see, where they go from here, because unless they go out and get players, and you guys mentioned players that are out of the lineup, I would argue that even if all 3 were healthy, I'm not sure how much difference it makes as far as total wins. Maybe 2 to 3, I would say. I don't think it's much more than that. Like, if you there's analytical math that you guys can do. I know it's Charlie O'Connor from the Athletic here in Philly. He did a story, and part of his mailbag, he did a story about that, like what their value would be, and it ended up being, I think, grand total of like 2.1 wins or something along those lines. So it's not a lot. So what does it make them? Does it make them a playoff team? Close, maybe. But do you really want to be the last wild card this season in the Eastern Conference and have to play Boston?
You're losing 3.
That's the thing. Like, I don't know what good it does you. So, like the Flyers are in a bad spot. This was the year to be really bad, obviously, with the draft coming up, and they're not. And they're going to end up picking 7, 8, 9, and they'll get a good player, and that's great. But they're not going to get one of those top 4 that are going to be, game changers in this league.
Anthony, we know fans in Philly aren't necessarily the most patient and they're a little vocal and they're animated, and we loved it when we were at the draft in 2014. We had a great time in Philly and getting a chance to be in your city and had a, like I said, it's quite an experience. But the reason I ask that, or the reason I make that statement, is just simply because this is a team, 50 years removed from their Stanley Cups. They had a good run of success in 2007, 8 to 2011, 12, including a Stanley Cup Finals loss. But since that point, look, they're not quite as bad as the Buffalo Sabres in terms of futility, because the Sabres, they're at least making the playoffs every other year. But what is the long-term vision for this team? Because I can't imagine, and I know you wrote about it because that's part of the chaos in your opening answer to Drew. But I mean, from a fan base perspective, a fan base that doesn't take losing lightly, how are the fans reacting? Because you said there's more butts in the seat, but given the fact that this team doesn't seem to have that vision, how is that sustainable?
Yeah, it's not. And there's only more butts in seats in comparison this season to last, right? So last season, there were some games where they announced a bigger crowd. You guys know, I mean, the announced crowd is tickets sold. It's not the actual drop count. The drop count is the actual people who come into the building, right? So, but there were drop counts in the 6,500 range last year. Okay, that's how bad it had gotten. So now they're back up over 10,000 a game, right? But there's still a lot of empty seats out there, right? And so that's how the fans are reacting. They're saying, we're not coming back until you guys prove to us that you're worth coming to see night in, night out, to be a competitive team. So that's how they're reacting. But what's the direction, Dave? I couldn't tell you, because if you look at it over that course of that decade, right? I mean, so after that group fails in 2012, and that's mostly because they lost Pronger that year to the eye injury, and he was the guy. Not just, I mean, obviously he's a great player, but he was the one guy in that locker room who could have controlled Brizgalov. And so once Pronger goes out and you don't have him there to kind of take charge, the goalie goes nuts, right? And then they end up losing in the second round of New Jersey. I actually talked to Mike Richards after the fact, and he had said, we were convinced we were playing Philly in the final and we weren't sure we could beat them. That's what LA was thinking. They won the Stanley Cup. Okay.
Right.
So
wouldn't that have been a hell of a storyline?
It would have been fun, right? It would have been a great storyline.
Yeah.
But that Philly team was probably one of the better teams in that 2008 to 2012 run. That was probably one of their better teams. But since then, Holmgren steps out of the GM spot. Hextall comes in. Hextall has a bunch of bad drafts at the top. He's had a few, gems that he's gotten later in the rounds that have turned into NHL players, which is great, but no top end talent. He missed obviously on the Nolan Patrick pick. He missed on Herman Ruptsov. That was a bad pick. Even in the second, like later in the first round, they took Morgan Frost, and then they traded up for Isaac Ratcliffe and missed out on Robertson, who's going crazy in Dallas, right? I mean, so there was a lot of misses in there, and a lot of the players that he said, "Hey, be patient, the kids are coming." They've turned into NHL players, but are they stars? No. I mean, Sanheim's a nice defenseman, but he's just a second pair guy, right? Probably. Provorov's not a 1. He's a 2, maybe a 3, but he's a 2. Okay. So he's not that star defenseman, and even like guys like, Konechny's having a great year this year and finally kind of breaking out. But I mean, it took 7 years. And will he be consistent beyond this year? So you look at what Hextall's done, and then, trading Braden Shen and getting 2 players. You heard Bob Clark say it on the Cam and Strick podcast, right? I mean, he said Hexy's sent us back almost a decade with the way he managed the team. And then Hextall leaves, and you bring in Fletcher, and Fletcher's there. You got to try and clean it up, which he has, but he's very conservative in his approach. He's not willing to go out and take a risk in the draft. Like everyone thought, Cole Caulfield. You got to take Cole Caulfield. He's at the pick, and they went with Cam York because they felt, oh, well, we can get Bobby Brink in the second round, and we think the combination of York and Brink will ultimately be better than us just drafting Caulfield. Well, I don't know. I mean, we'll wait and see, but I mean, we'll see what you see what Caulfield is already, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of conservative in Chuck that just doesn't work out. And so that's been 5 years. So you had 4.5 years of Hextall and 4.5 years of Fletcher. And it's been stuck in that neutral spot for that entire time with no idea of where you're going. And I don't know if the Flyers know where they're going right now. I mean, you got to hope that the kid that they drafted in the first round last year, Cutter Gauthier, who's having a really nice season at Boston College, right, and looked great for Team USA and World Junior. You got to hope that he is the real deal. Otherwise, who's left that's top end? I don't know. I mean, you could say Couturier is a top line center, but he hasn't played hockey in 2 years. Who knows what he's going to look like when he comes back, right? You know, and Cam Atkinson is not getting any younger. You know, I mean, he's probably a second line, maybe it's still a second line winger. Konechny's probably just a second line guy. He's a first line guy on a bad team, but probably on a good team as a second line guy. So, like, where is all that top talent coming from? They don't have it. They don't have it in the system. And they need to acquire assets. That's what they need. And they're just not doing it. Or they don't seem to have a plan to do it. And that's the problem.
Well, let's talk about acquiring assets. Anthony Sanfilippo of CrossingBroad.com is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Anthony covers the Flyers, has done so for over a decade, at least so far, probably closer to 2 decades.
Over 2 decades.
There you go, over 2 decades.
Well, I was going to say, it's next week, Anthony, is our 14th year anniversary, going back to the Red River College radio days, and you were one of our first guests. I think a couple of months in, we had you on when you wrote for the Delaware County Daily Times. So it's been at least 14 years.
Yeah. No, I've been covering the Flyers since the 2000-2001 season. That's my first year.
So you mentioned, trade assets, trade chips, things of that nature. And of course, the trade deadline is coming up. I want to ask about Ivan Provorov, and I want to take away the whole pride thing out of the equation just for this conversation, because even before that came to the surface, there was a lot of talk about him being on the block. He wasn't happy with his role on the Flyers. Reading between the lines, it sounds like he might not get, there might be some conflict in the dressing room between him and some of the other players on the team. You would know better than I would on that front. So, first of all, it's going to be very controversial for any team to acquire him now, which has obviously probably sunk his trade value to a fair degree. But if a team bites that bullet and decides to acquire him, what are you getting? Because this is a guy who had been linked to Winnipeg. There was the talk about, the Jets, way back when, had explored Line for Provorov. You and I discussed that before. He played for Brandon. He played for the Wheat Kings. So, what is Ivan Provorov as a strictly on ice performer for the Flyers at this point of his career?
He's not a bad defenseman. I think that what happens, I think he gets a lot of bad publicity in this town. Like you said, outside of the whole pride thing, he gets bad publicity because everyone expected him to be that superstar defenseman. I'll be honest. I had a big argument with some people at Crossing Broad about 4 years ago. They were putting together a list of the top 20 athletes in Philadelphia, and they had I didn't even think they had Provorov on the list. And I was telling them, this guy's got potential to be a Norris Trophy guy. And this was 4 years ago. I kind of felt that that's what his ability was. And I was wrong. And I'm not the only one. I mean, a lot of people were wrong on him. And so I think that because he's not meeting that expectation level, people don't think he's good. He's still a very good defenseman. Okay, he's a guy who can play 25 minutes a night. He doesn't miss a game. He's durable as can be. He's really good. Right, exactly. Just misses warm up. He's only the only games he's ever missed in his career were he missed 2 games that were related to COVID. Right, and he was asymptomatic. He wanted to play, like, but the league wouldn't let him. So he's really durable. He's really good in his own end. He plays a physical style, right? He's very positionally sound. He can skate with the puck well. He's a little bit of a like catching a hand grenade when he catches passes. That's what he wants to be on the power play, but shouldn't be. His shot's not bad, but you try and get a puck back to him and it explodes off the end of his stick, and he's also not quick making a decision on that power play. So that's where he's kind of hurt the team in the past. Torts took him off the power play entirely. Like, he doesn't even play power play now.
That caused a lot some of the conflict there, right?
Right, it certainly has. He wants to play on the power play, and Torts is telling him, no, you don't deserve it. So, what would a team get? A team would get a legit top pair guy, especially if you have a really good player to pair him with. And especially if you could keep him on the left side. He's better on the left than he is on the right. So if you have a good right side defenseman, right-hand shot defenseman on your top pair, and you need that, left shot defenseman, well, then that's a really good addition. And you're going to get a really good player. And he's still young. Right? He's still 25 years old. Right? He's young. Yeah. He's turning 25, or either just turning 25 or just turning 26. Either way, he's still young. So there is great value there. And Chuck Fletcher, from what I understand, talking to some of my guys, he's holding out. Like, he wants real value in return. If you're trading Provorov, he wants real value. Like, he wants an NHL caliber player, top 6 forward, or a combination of like a really, really top end prospect and a draft pick. Like, he wants a lot for him. And, teams right now are balking at it. I know that LA, they asked LA for Byfield, and LA said no. And then Flyers said, all right, well, then call us back when you're willing to make that move. I mean, so that's kind of what you're looking at, right? I mean, that's what the Flyers are looking at. Now, this was previous to the whole pride thing, so maybe that comes down a little bit, right? Because you are, he is a little bit toxic now, of course. But if you think you're a Stanley Cup contender, and Winnipeg certainly is in the Western Conference this year, do you bite that bullet and make that move for a guy like Provorov? I would. I think he would be a great fit with the Jets. I really do. And I think he would be comfortable there, obviously, having played junior hockey there. And it's a really good team, and he could just kind of assimilate and fit right in. I think that's the perfect kind of scenario for him. The question is, what will Chevy give the Flyers back? And that's what you guys have to figure out. And I don't think they're the only team. Obviously, I know, like I said, LA is interested as well, and I think there's probably two or three other teams that are interested. What are they willing to give up? And if that is the limit, if their limit is not what the Flyers want, the Flyers will hold on to him because he signed for a couple more years, and they can just do that. They can keep him because it's actually a valuable contract when you really think about it.
So it's a salvageable relationship still in Philadelphia?
I don't think so. Oh. I don't think it's salvageable at all. I just think it's a situation where they sit there and say, we don't have to move him right now. Like, we could try again in the summer when 31 teams might be interested as opposed to 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think it's one of those kind of situations. And I don't think Provorov has not demanded a trade, but I do know that they've spoken about the potential of maybe it's better if he goes somewhere else. And I think both sides agree, but it's not something that it's like, you have to do this or else we're going to make a big public stink out of it. So no, it's not to that point yet, but I do think that there's going to be something that happens. I would be surprised if it happens at the deadline, but I certainly think it will happen in the summer.
Anthony, I wanted to ask you about Wade Allison, right? Because he's just, about an hour south of us in Carman, Manitoba. That's his hometown. I think he was Roland is also where he calls hometown here in Manitoba, smaller town near Carman. Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you about Wade because obviously, he played the full 4 years, Western Michigan, played a little bit with the Phantoms in the AHL, but he's having a breakout season with 7 goals, and he's been on that third line. I believe that third line is with Kevin Hayes and Scott Lawton, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if they've been together the whole year or just part of the year, but I know that last time the Jets and Flyers played a week ago, that was the line. And, just wanted to ask you about, Allison and his value with the Flyers, because I imagine he's a guy that, in the dressing room, really well respected, a guy who, started his NHL career a little bit later than some players, but it seems like just yesterday he was drafted in Buffalo. Dave and I were there in 2016. But just how would you assess Allison's play? Because obviously, he's having the most success he's ever had at the NHL level this year with the Flyers.
If he could stay healthy, he's a great fit for that third line. I mean, that's right where he belongs. And Scott Lawton is the de facto captain of this team. I don't know if you guys know, Torts decided that there shouldn't be any captain this year, and he gave only one player a letter, and it was Scott Lawton wears an A, right? So nobody else wears an A, just Lawton. So he's the de facto captain. Mm-hmm. And Lawton's had his best year as a Flyer. Kevin Hayes has had his best offensive year in his career. He's got 44 points in 48 games. I think that's what he's played. And Allison fits really nice. They put that line together, I'd say, right around the holidays, maybe just before. Again, I know they played at Toronto, Carolina back to back. I think that's about when Allison came. I'm trying to remember when he came back from his injury, but that's when they put that line together, and it's been together ever since, and it's been a very productive line for him. Now, Allison went out of the game in Minnesota the other night. I don't know what his status is, if he's going to be playing tonight in Winnipeg.
Should mention, Anthony, you know this, but he got into a fight with, I think it was Mason Shaw, right? So I'm not sure if it had anything to do with that, but he did drop the mitts in that game.
Yeah. So I don't know what his I don't know what his injury is. I do know that Zach McEwen's out of the lineup and Kiefer Bellows is going to be in. That was related to the fight as well. But if Allison can stay healthy, that's the perfect role for him, and he's been a good player in that role. They need him to do a little bit more. They think he can score a little bit more than he has. But he plays in a straight line, and he plays good with the puck. He's got a nice shot. He's not terrible defensively. Like he's actually pretty reliable in his own end. So he's a player that I think that they look at and say, as we are moving forward and as we are building this is a guy we think can be part of that nucleus. Maybe not at a higher level. Maybe he just is that third line guy, but that's okay. You need them, right? You need those kind of glue players. Wade Allison certainly fits that bill.
Anthony Sanfilippo covers the Philadelphia Flyers for CrossingBroad.com. He's a longtime good friend of this program. Anthony, thanks for this. It's been great catching up with you.
Hold on, are we not gonna do a score prediction between the Eagles and Niners?
Oh, well, he says he's not an Eagles fan.
But I am a Niners fan. Here, look, I got the 49ers hat.
Oh, you are a Niners
I love
fan.
it.
Okay, I didn't realize. Why are you a Niners fan?
Don't wear that in Philly.
Yeah, I know. I grew up a 49ers fan. Joe Montana. My era was Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. I was a kid and I loved them. They were good, obviously. When you're a kid, you root for the good teams.
Right.
But I've always rooted for San Francisco, and I can't be more excited that the 49ers and Eagles are playing tomorrow. And I think it's going to be
a very game, Anthony.
I will not be at the game. I'll be sitting and watching it on TV.
That's what to be.
But
safer that way.
Yes, much safer that way. And I'm going to ride with the Niners. I think it's a low-scoring, tough, close game. Either way, I think these are the two best teams in the NFL. I think whoever wins the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But I'll take the 49ers in a close one, say something like 23-20. Somewhere in that range, I think, is what the game's going to be. So,
well, you heard it here first, folks. Anthony says the Niners win 23-20.
I'm going with Anthony. I'm behind the Niners. And Anthony's from Philly, so I could. Yeah, we got the Royal Rumble coming up too.
Yeah, that's here, isn't it?
Everything's in Philly.
No,
everything is happening in Philly.
Oh no, the Raw
Monday
thing
night
was just
the 30th anniversary.
30th anniversary was just here in Philly. Yeah. I mean, we have a lot going on here, man.
You do have a lot.
It's crazy.
That's why you only have to go to one spot. It's great.
Yeah.
Baseball, football, basketball, hockey.
I was at the World. Yeah, guys, I was in the locker room when the Phillies won the NLCS, and I was getting ready to do the interview with the team owner, John Middleton, and I'm just kind of like standing off to the side because he's doing a TV interview. I'm like just waiting to do a one-on-one with him, and three players come over just as that's happening with the champagne bottles and the beer, and they start spraying it all over him and all over me. I got a great photo of me with my glasses flying off and champagne pouring over my head, standing right behind the owner. So yeah, it was really cool to be part of that as well. So yeah, and now the Sixers are great. The Sixers are doing really well. It's a wild time, except the hockey team.
Well,
like nobody really cares about the hockey team, right?
Except the team you spend the most of your time covering. Except for that, there you go. Anthony, thank you, buddy. It's great seeing you.
Anytime, guys. Love it.
Cheers, Anthony.
Real soon. There he goes. Anthony Sanfilippo, our good friend, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We'll go to break. When we come back, one last quick segment, and then we'll get you set for tonight's Jets-Flyers game, and then the Illegal Curve post-game show after that. Don't go anywhere. We're going into overtime here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you, but why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly, see lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We're back. One final segment this Saturday morning. We may have started 6 minutes late today, but at least we'll go a few minutes over that to make sure everyone gets their full 2-hour window of illegal.
Naomi for sure is like sitting or standing at the back, like at the back of our house by the door with like a stopwatch. And she's probably like counting down every second right now. So yeah, we can go a few minutes late, but let's not,
sure, so
let's not take it to 11:15 or anything like that, Drew.
Well, my kids and wife have gone somewhere. I'm not 100% sure where they've left to. So, Dave, what do you say? An extra hour and a half today? Are you good?
Hey, whatever you need. I'm available.
There you go. You and I, as
I've got time until the moose are at the zoo at 1:30 to 2:30. So I'll.
You can text Laura and just ask Laura where they are.
Yeah, no, I know where they actually are, Ezra. I just, I was just going on with a little bit of a shtick here on the show. But I appreciate that.
Or use your pager. Use your pager, Drew.
I'll use my
Primer timer knows who the stars of the show are.
Yeah, I'm gonna say prime timer. Words hurt, my friend. Words hurt. But speaking of words hurting, I was great to meet up with yesterday. I had the opportunity to meet Doug Thorosky, who of course is in the chat on a regular basis.
He's a 2-time Tough Duck winner.
He is a multiple-time Tough Duck winner. He's a Legal Curve merchandise contest winner, but it was just by happenstance we happened to run into each other, and it was great to finally meet Doug in person. And we took a great photo together that's available on Ezra's Instagram account. If anyone wants to check that out, you can find it there.
Nobody wants to check out my Instagram.
There's some deep dark secrets there, folks. You just don't want to see what's happening on that Instagram account. In any event, it was great to see Doug, just like it is great to see all of you here this Saturday morning, and again, hopefully later on tonight, 8:45. Myself and Ezra will be here to talk about the Jets Flyers game. It would be excessive to say it's a must-win game for the Winnipeg Jets because none of their games right at this stage of the season are must-wins, but the team definitely needs a stronger performance, and that's something that I think they know, they spoke about, and I'm curious to see how they can respond to that, especially in light of yesterday's comments and everything else, and see how they can take care of a weaker opponent against the Flyers tonight, and then again on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday when they face the St. Louis Blues on all 4 days based on my reading of the calendar.
Yeah, they're not must-win games, Drew, as you mentioned, but they're want wins, if you want to call it that, in that they want to win these games because they've lost 4 of their last 6, and some of those games have been pretty ugly, including the last game against the Sabres, in which the Sabres, controlled the play. I would argue for 2/3, 3/4 of the game. It wasn't until late in the third, right, boys, that the Jets had their pushback and made it a little bit interesting. That we mentioned this a couple nights ago. The score really flattered the Jets. Anybody watching that game, or going to Natural Stat Trick and checking out the possession numbers, would know that the expected goals were heavily tilted in the favor of the Sabres. So yeah, I mean, the Flyers are a scrappy team. We just saw them last Sunday, and the Jets needed some heroics from Carson Kuhlman to win that game. But, Kevin Hayes is a player you always have to be worried about. Travis Konechny is a dangerous player. But the fall off is pretty steep after that. Like, you've got a top heavy Flyers roster. I mean, you throw in, James Van Riemsdyk as well. And Noah Cates is having a good rookie season. Scott Lawton is a guy that you have to worry about. But the point is, I mean, the Flyers are kind of that prototypical, like, they've got, a good second line and then, a bunch of third lines. They don't really have a legitimate top line. Certainly like, the Jets or Bruins or Leafs or, some of the elite teams in the league right now. So yeah, you have to win this game. And, you hopefully want to get some guys breaking out offensively, Dave, right? Like we've talked about, some of the scoring struggles on the third and fourth lines, but, Ehlers hasn't scored a goal in his last 3 games. Not saying that he hasn't played well, because I actually thought he was the Jets' best forward last game against the Sabres. But yeah, you got to have a much better performance, and you got to simplify your game and definitely get more rubber on the net, whether that's Carter Hart or Sandstrom. You have to see more sustained pressure. You want to see that speed used better by the Jets, and you want to get some guys going, like I said, who've been struggling offensively.
They certainly do want to get
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Jerk face, I was actually going to set you up for that.
I was going to do it again. Try it again. Hold on. Pretend like that didn't happen.
I'm not going to do it again, but I was going to give you that opportunity because I know the Moose played last night against the Marlies. They fell to the Toronto Marlies, and I was going to tee you up for Sunday because it's Dancing Gabe's 60th birthday, and it's a celebration at the Moose game on
Happy birthday,
Sunday.
Dancing Gabe.
I'll let you go. I'll let you continue now, Dave M, to wrap up this morning's program.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Wait, how did that happen twice? Anywho, the Moose were in action last night against the Marlies, having won twice last week against the division-leading Texas Stars. So there was some expectation they might get some guys back. Of course, Ville Heinola, after being reassigned, he returned to the lineup, and Jansen Harkins, who had missed both games last week, he was back in the lineup. Cole Meyer, Evan Poli, 2/3 of the lunch pail line, they were still unavailable. They may be able to play tomorrow. Ultimately the Moose lost. They had a final push. Leon Gavanke scored from Ville Heinola and Jansen Harkins on a 6-on-5 to try to narrow the lead to 2-1, but the Moose ultimately lost. But you're right, Drew. The big focus is tomorrow, Dancing Gabe's birthday, 60 years old for the Winnipeg legend. And so it should be a great celebration for Dancing Gabe. Great guy, always make sure that Illegal Curve has holiday cards, always says hello to me, always knows everything. I always ask when I see him in the arena how you two are doing. So he's a real friend of this show, and he's a friend of everybody in the city, and he is a Winnipeg legend appropriately. So, and I like that the Moose are choosing to celebrate his birthday. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of fun festivities for Dancing Gabe. We wish him a happy birthday here, obviously, on the show. And you too can be in attendance to wish Dancing Gabe a happy birthday, because I have 4 seats in the Illegal Curve zone for anyone who wants to go to the game. So if you want to go see the Moose in action against the Marlies, the final game of this homestand, I believe it's probably the final time of the year that they're going to wear the white jerseys. They'll switch to the dark blues for after the All-Star break. So final chance to see that. Opportunity to wish Dancing Gabe birthday. See the Jets prospects in action. Lots of opportunity. It should be a good one tomorrow afternoon. Puck drop is at 2:00. So if you want to go to the game, you can get a chance at that. And also, if you're curious about Jets prospects, Ezzy and I were talking about doing a prospects update one of these days. We haven't done that yet. But in the notes today, I've got some updates on Chaz Lucius in 2021. First round of the Jets. He's with Portland, of course. He had 2 goals, 1 assist last night in the win over the Broncos. And Brad Lambert's still dealing with some visa issues, so he's not playing right now for Seattle. He played while they were in Canada. And Rutger McGroarty had a goal for Michigan in their win over Penn State. And I believe Danny Zhilkin, who had a couple of goals maybe in the OHL. So lots happening with the prospects, trying to keep it up to date. Go to illegalcurve.com in the morning papers. In one of the notes, I think note 4 has an update.
There you go, illegalcurve.com, your home for all the latest Winnipeg Jets news, audio, Manitoba Moose news, audio, everything to do with hockey here in this fair city.
And the Ice lost also. Sorry, Drew. We should say the Ice lost yesterday.
A rare loss to Lethbridge.
Yeah. And they've got a 3-3, so they're playing Red Deer. 3 in Alberta today, tomorrow. They're in Red Deer, which is a battle of the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference.
There you go. Dave M keeping everybody up to date on everything that's going on. That's the end of hearing from Dave M for the rest of today. He's gone for tonight's post game. Ezzy and I will be here 8:45 p.m. Central Time to talk about the Jets and the Philadelphia Flyers. Ezzy will be there if Naomi doesn't murder him. It's a 50-50 shot. We're not sure what's going to happen. Maybe it'll be the Drew Mandel experience, and we all can look forward to that. I want to say a big thank you to all of you for joining us this morning. It was great fun as per usual. Big thanks to Kenny Weeb and Anthony Sanfilippo. In case you missed any of the program, the instant replay is available on our YouTube channel. The podcast will be available very shortly. Dave M will be hard at work getting that up. And of course, we want you to join us tonight for the Illegal Curve post-game show. The best place to be each and every Saturday, and again, after every Jets game, is the Illegal Curve YouTube channel. Want to say a big thank you to our sponsors who make the post-game show, the Saturday show, and the website a possibility. Our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. Kevin Farley in town tonight. All shows sold out, as they've been all week. Kyle Bottom next week. A lot of those shows are almost sold out as well. Get them quickly. Get your tickets quickly. RumorsComedyClub.com.
You really had to get on top of that to get those tickets.
Yes, exactly. That's very clever there, as he using the pun on his name being Bottom. That was well done. I picked up on that one. Dave's terrible joke about the pager, I still went right over my head. That one I got.
No. We were talking about JG Pajot, not a pager.
There you go.
Zappia Group Realty, Linden Market Dental Center, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, Grid Park, and The Keg. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. We appreciate all your support. Leave us some feedback everywhere you can find this show, everywhere you get this show. We'll be back later tonight, 8:45, after the Jets and the Flyers. Until then, folks, have a great rest of your Saturday. For Dave Manouk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mandel. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, live on YouTube and our social media platforms.